What makes a cult so captivating and so dangerous? At first glance, many cults seem indistinguishable from thriving communities. They offer purpose, belonging, and structure. But beneath the surface, the same dynamics that nurture healthy groups, collaboration, feedback, and shared goals, become distorted into tools of control and manipulation. The key to understanding this transformation lies in a surprisingly simple framework: the relationships between a leader, members, and their shared environment. In today's talk, we'll explore how these three elements, which we call triads, shape the life of any group. Healthy groups rely on affirmed triads, where leaders empower, members contribute, and the environment supports growth. But in cults, these relationships are negated, twisting into patterns of suppression, blame, and dependency. Why does a charismatic leader's guidance in one group lead to inspiration, while in another, it fuels control and fear? How does an environment that once welcomed diversity of thought turn into an echo chamber? And what happens to members when all their connections depend on complete submission to the system? Through this lens, we'll address questions like, how does a cult manufacture an illusion of harmony where dissent is unthinkable? What happens when feedback loops are weaponized, turning accountability into fear? Why do groups become fragile under enforced conformity? And how can members begin to reclaim their agency when every relationship in the system is designed to trap them? As we unpack these triads, we'll show how the very structures that hold a group together can also drive its most toxic behaviors. But more importantly, we'll explore what members can do to recognize and resist these dynamics, offering insights not just for escaping toxic systems, but for building healthier, more resilient communities. By the end of this exploration, you'll have a sharper understanding of how cults operate, but also how they can be countered. Whether you're part of a community, leading one, or simply observing from the outside, these insights will help you spot the warning signs of manipulation and the pathways to liberation. Let's dive in. Let's start with a question. What makes a group feel harmonious? Is it the free exchange of ideas, mutual respect, and shared purpose? Or is it simply the absence of conflict? True harmony, built on coexistence, relies on balance. Leaders empower, members contribute, and the surrounding environment nurtures growth. This dynamic allows groups to adapt and evolve as challenges arise. But in a cult, this balance is an illusion. Instead of coexistence, we see a distorted equilibrium, where harmony is maintained not through openness, but through fear. Voices are silenced, the environment is controlled, and dissent becomes unthinkable. The relationships between the leader, members, and their shared world, relationships that should foster growth, are twisted into mechanisms of control. Consider the story of the People's Temple under Jim Jones. At its peak, the group seemed like a beacon of coexistence. Jim Jones inspired his followers with promises of racial harmony and social justice, building a community where people felt they belonged. But as his grip tightened, coexistence gave way to control. Members began to fear speaking out, worried they'd be labeled as traitors or punished. In Jonestown, the group's isolated settlement in Guyana, the environment itself became a tool of suppression. Cut off from the outside world, members were immersed in Jones's narrative, their reality shaped entirely by what he allowed them to see and hear. Questions and doubts, critical to any healthy system, were systematically suppressed. Public shaming and surveillance ensured that no one dared disrupt the illusion of harmony. This is the danger of distorted equilibrium. It freezes a group in place. What looks like unity is really rigidity. Without open dialogue, growth stops. Without outside perspectives, the group becomes fragile. When internal tensions or external pressures arise, such systems often collapse under their own weight. But how can members trapped in such a system begin to resist? The first step is recognizing that the harmony they feel isn't real, it's enforced. Building small, trusted connections with others in the group can create pockets of genuine coexistence. Seeking outside perspectives, even in small, cautious ways, can help break the hold of the leader's narrative. And for those ready to leave, planning an exit with emotional and practical support becomes vital. By understanding the difference between coexistence and distorted equilibrium, we can not only identify when a group's harmony is false, we can also find the courage to challenge it. True harmony isn't silent or rigid, it's alive, adaptive, and built on trust, not fear. Every thriving group depends on a healthy cycle of feedback. In a system of reinforcement, leaders inspire members, members contribute to their environment, and the environment, in turn, energizes the leader. This creates a virtuous cycle where each element strengthens the others, fostering growth, adaptability, and resilience. But when feedback loops are distorted, they become weapons of control. Instead of mutual growth, the group is locked in a spiral of blame and fear. Doubts are punished, responsibilities are evaded, and the system becomes brittle, unable to evolve or withstand pressure. Consider the inner workings of Scientology, a group often cited for its rigid and suppressive feedback dynamics. At its core is the practice of auditing, a process that claims to help members achieve personal breakthroughs. In theory, it's a reinforcing system. Leaders guide members through self-reflection, members grow, and the group's environment supports their success. But in reality, auditing often becomes a tool of coercion. When a member voices concerns, say about the financial burden of sessions or the validity of the doctrine, the leader interprets this as disloyalty. The doubter is labeled a suppressive person, shamed and ostracized. The group's environment reinforces this judgment with propaganda celebrating obedience and condemning dissent. Members internalize the fear of becoming the next target. When the leader's authority is questioned, the environment is further tightened to eliminate outside influences and preserve control. This is how a distorted feedback loop takes hold. Instead of refining the system, it punishes honesty and suppresses growth, creating a closed cycle that feeds on fear. Breaking free from this cycle starts with challenging the narrative of blame. Members can emphasize collective responsibility, shifting the focus from punishment to problem-solving. Trusted, informal conversations provide a safe space for honest dialogue, bypassing the group's mechanisms of control. Seeking outside perspectives can bring clarity, showing members that the problem isn't them, it's the system. In a healthy group, feedback builds strength. In a toxic one, it tears people down. By disrupting distorted feedback loops, members can reclaim their voices and rebuild their group or their lives on a foundation of trust and growth. Healthy groups rely on a constructive chain of influence, where leaders inspire members, members shape their environment, and the environment adapts to external challenges. This causal dynamic fosters resilience, enabling the group to adjust and grow even when one part falters. But in toxic systems, this chain breaks down. Causality is replaced by distorted reversion, a self-referential loop where failures are manipulated to reinforce the leader's control and dissent is blamed for every problem. This dynamic traps the group in dysfunction, unable to adapt or evolve. The Unification Church, led by Sun Myung Moon, provides a stark example. Known for its intense retention strategies, the group used distorted reversion to ensure members remained deeply entangled. When members expressed doubts or struggled with the pressures of group life, their feelings were reframed as personal failings or spiritual tests. Leaders encouraged isolation, cutting members off from outside influences under the guise of devotion. They were immersed in group activities, ensuring their environment reinforced dependence on Moon's vision. Members who voiced unhappiness were told their dissatisfaction stemmed from a lack of faith or commitment. Rather than addressing systemic issues, the group placed blame squarely on individuals, trapping them in a cycle of guilt and deeper submission. Meanwhile, challenges facing the group were framed as divine tests or attacks from external enemies, justifying even harsher demands. Small successes were credited entirely to Moon, reinforcing the idea that the group could not survive without his leadership. This closed system ensured retention by convincing members that leaving would mean not only betraying the group, but failing as individuals. Doubt became a sign of weakness, and external perspectives were dismissed as dangerous. Members were trapped in a spiral of self-blame and dependency, unable to see beyond the group's manipulative tactics. Breaking free from such dynamics begins with recognizing these strategies for what they are: deliberate mechanisms of control. Conversations with trusted individuals outside the group can provide essential perspective, reminding members that doubt is not a weakness, but a sign of critical thinking. Reframing problems as systemic rather than personal challenges can also disrupt the narrative of blame, opening the door to constructive questions like, what structural issues are causing these difficulties? Even subtle acts of independence, forming trusted connections within the group or spending time away from its influence, can help members begin to reclaim their agency. Distorted reversion locks groups into cycles of blame and fear, but it can be disrupted. By challenging the leader's narrative, fostering connections, and seeking outside perspectives, members can break free from these manipulative loops and begin to rebuild their lives with clarity and autonomy. Thriving groups are marked by their flexibility, a dynamic interplay where leaders inspire a vision, members contribute creatively, and the environment adapts to challenges. These systems are non-linear, flourishing through indirect and mutual connections that encourage innovation and resilience. Flexibility ensures that the group evolves in response to setbacks, drawing strength from its ability to reimagine and adapt. In toxic systems, however, flexibility is replaced with distorted retrospection, a backward-looking control that rewrites failures to justify the leader's authority. Instead of evolving, the group becomes trapped in a rigid narrative where the past is weaponized to suppress dissent and prevent change. Successes reinforce dependence on the leader, while failures are reframed as the fault of the members, leaving no room for growth or critical reflection. A tragic example of this is Heaven's Gate, the cult led by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. The group initially promised transcendence and spiritual evolution, attracting seekers longing for meaning and purpose. But when their apocalyptic predictions failed to materialize, their dynamics shifted from inspiration to entrapment. The first missed prophecy, the group's anticipated departure from Earth, could have sparked reassessment or adaptation. Instead, Applewhite reframed the failure as a test of the members' faith, blaming dissent for undermining the group's spiritual mission. Those who questioned the leader's authority were ostracized, creating scapegoats for setbacks. Applewhite used the environment, shaped by tightly controlled narratives, to justify even more extreme measures. Members were told that recommitment and greater sacrifices were the only path forward. Over time, this closed system eradicated any possibility of critical reflection. Failures were always attributed to the members' lack of faith or effort, while any perceived successes were credited solely to Applewhite's vision. The group became increasingly rigid, locked in a cycle of blame and dependence that culminated in the tragic mass suicide of 1997. Breaking free from such systems begins with recognizing how the past is being manipulated. Members can ask questions that challenge the leader's monopoly on interpretation. Why are failures consistently blamed on the group rather than the leader's decisions? Why is the leader exempt from accountability? These questions open the door for critical thought and honest dialogue, disrupting the rigid narrative of blame. Reclaiming agency often starts with small steps. Seeking external perspectives, whether through trusted individuals outside the group or independent observations of its history, can help clarify how the past is being misused. Subtle acts of independence, such as exploring new ideas or projects that lie outside the leader's narrative, can create space for growth and possibility. Flexibility fosters creativity and resilience. Distorted retrospection breeds stagnation and control. By challenging backward-looking manipulation, members can begin to reclaim their voices, reimagine their environment, and move toward a future unbound by the weight of manipulated narratives. Healthy groups thrive on inclusivity, creating an environment where leaders, members, and surroundings work together to welcome new ideas and participants. In such systems, the leader fosters an open vision, members bring diverse perspectives, and the environment adapts to incorporate these contributions without threatening the group's core integrity. This dynamic allows for both growth and diversity, ensuring that the group evolves while maintaining a sense of belonging and support for all. In toxic systems, inclusivity is replaced with distorted exclusivity, a dynamic where openness is merely a facade. Outwardly, the group may appear welcoming, but beneath the surface, conformity is rigidly enforced. Those who fail to meet the group's expectations are excluded or punished, creating an atmosphere of fear and dependency. Dissent is seen not as a chance to grow, but as a threat to be eliminated, ensuring that members feel trapped by the fear of isolation and rejection. The practices of the Jehovah's Witnesses provide a clear example of distorted exclusivity. The group often portrays itself as a welcoming spiritual community, inviting new members to join through door-to-door evangelism and public outreach. But once inside, the dynamics shift dramatically. Members who question the group's teachings or deviate from its strict behavioral codes face escalating consequences. A member who begins to express doubt or disagreement might find themselves subtly ostracized from social activities, losing access to the community events and resources that were once central to their lives. If their dissent continues, the consequences become more severe. They may be publicly disfellowshipped, a formal process that not only cuts them off from the leader's favor, but also requires current members, including close family, to shun them completely. The environment, once framed as a haven, now enforces the group's exclusivity by ensuring that dissenters have nowhere to turn. This dynamic creates a powerful trap. Members conform not because they believe, but because leaving would mean losing their entire social network and support system. What once appeared to be a welcoming community reveals itself as a rigid, all-or-nothing system, where loyalty is rewarded and dissent is punished with total exclusion. Breaking free from distorted exclusivity requires careful, deliberate steps. Members can begin by quietly questioning the group's claims of inclusion. Asking subtle yet pointed questions such as, "Why are certain members excluded or punished for their ideas?" can help expose inconsistencies in the group's narrative and sow seeds of doubt. Building relationships outside the group, even in small, cautious ways, provides an emotional lifeline and a source of perspective. Advocating for more flexible participation can also subvert the all-or-nothing thinking that exclusivity relies on. Highlighting the value of partial contributions or diverse perspectives can challenge the notion that loyalty requires total conformity. For those ready to leave, gradual disengagement, such as reducing reliance on group resources or withdrawing from activities, can make the process less overwhelming. Inclusivity fosters connection, growth, and resilience, while distorted exclusivity isolates and entraps. By recognizing these dynamics and cultivating external support, members can begin to loosen the grip of exclusion and move toward a more open, authentic sense of community. In a healthy group, the leader acts as a fulcrum, balancing the members and environment in a tightly interconnected dynamic. The leader's vision guides and inspires, empowering members to contribute meaningfully, while the environment provides the resources and opportunities to sustain the group's collective efforts. In turn, members and the environment support and strengthen the leader, creating a dynamic feedback loop of synergy. This conjoined structure ensures that no single element bears the entire burden. If one falters, the others adjust to maintain balance. In toxic systems, this dynamic becomes corrupted. What once enabled mutual support now traps members in a bottleneck of dependency. The leader consolidates all control, forcing members to rely entirely on them and the environment for every need. Flexibility and mutuality are replaced by rigidity and domination. Members who step out of line or question the system risk losing everything: their connection to the leader, their place in the environment, and their ties to the group. Consider the structure of NXIVM, the notorious organization led by Keith Raniere. On the surface, NXIVM appeared to foster personal and professional growth, with Raniere as the inspiring fulcrum of a connected and ambitious network. But in reality, Raniere funneled members into a bottlenecked system where all paths led through him. Members were drawn into intensive workshops, where their time, finances, and emotional energy became tied exclusively to XIVM. They were told that Raniere alone held the keys to enlightenment, and the environment, the organization's resources and social network, reinforced this dependency. Those who questioned his methods or hesitated to comply with demands were subtly marginalized. They might lose access to professional opportunities or face exclusion from group events, creating a gradual but effective form of isolation. For many, leaving NXIVM was not simply a matter of walking away. To leave meant losing their community, their sense of purpose, and the resources they had come to depend on. This bottlenecking ensured that members felt trapped, fearing the consequences of disengagement even as they questioned the system's integrity. Breaking free from such dynamics begins with recognizing the leader's role as the bottleneck and understanding how this dependency is manufactured. Members can challenge the group's rigidity by asking questions like, why must everything go through one person? Why can't contributions or participation be more flexible? Such questions expose the unnatural control being exerted and encourage others to see the system's inherent flaws. Diversifying sources of support is another essential step. Rebuilding relationships outside the group, exploring new opportunities, or reconnecting with old interests can help members see that they are not as isolated as the bottlenecked system would have them believe. These external connections provide a foundation of emotional and practical support, reducing the fear of what might be lost by leaving. For those ready to disengage, taking gradual, deliberate steps can ease the transition. Participating less frequently, finding alternative resources, or coordinating with trusted allies within or outside the group can weaken the bottleneck's grip. Each step toward independence builds momentum, showing members that life beyond the group is not only possible but empowering. Synergy strengthens a group through mutual connection and shared resilience, while bottlenecking enforces weakness by trapping members in dependency. By understanding and dismantling this dynamic, members can reclaim their autonomy and rebuild their lives on their own terms. Harmony in groups is most evident when all elements, leader, members, and environment, are in balanced, dynamic relationships that support and reinforce one another. This harmonic dynamic involves three distinct interactions: the leader and members, the leader and environment, and the members and environment. Each pair strengthens the others, creating a system where collaboration is natural and self-sustaining. The group becomes adaptive and resilient, capable of responding to challenges while maintaining its core integrity. In toxic systems, these relationships break down into distorted dissonance. A failure in any one relationship triggers a chain reaction that undermines the entire system. The leader's instability alienates members and disrupts the environment. Members' dissent or disengagement causes the leader to tighten control and weakens the group's cohesion. Environmental pressures like scandals or external scrutiny amplify these failures, feeding a vicious cycle of collapse. The result is a group stuck in dysfunction, unable to adapt or recover. Let's break this down using the tragic story of the Order of the Solar Temple as an example. Initially, the order operated harmoniously, or so it seemed. Members viewed leaders Joseph Di Mambro and Luc Jouret as spiritual guides, contributing their time, money, and loyalty to support the group's lofty mission. The leaders, in turn, provided a shared vision of cosmic salvation, reinforced through elaborate rituals and teachings. The environment, a community of believers united by purpose, supported and reflected these relationships, creating a sense of belonging and meaning. But the harmony began to fray when cracks appeared in the environment. Financial scandals revealed Di Mambro's exploitation of group funds, and Jouret's spiritual prophecies began to lose credibility as members questioned their authenticity. The environment, once a source of inspiration and stability, became a breeding ground for doubt. This breakdown spread quickly. As the environment deteriorated, members lost faith in the leadership. Di Mambro and Jouret, instead of acknowledging these failings or adapting their approach, doubled down on control. They framed external criticism and internal dissent as attacks on the group's mission, intensifying their grip on the remaining members. This rigidity alienated even more members, further destabilizing the environment. Disillusioned members began leaving the group, further weakening the environment and its resources. The exodus deepened the leaders' paranoia, leading them to vilify dissenters and demand even greater loyalty from those who stayed. This dynamic turned the group's culture inward, cutting off opportunities for outside perspectives or renewal. As the leader's authority faltered under external pressures and internal failures, the group's entire structure began to collapse. Dimambro and Jure relied increasingly on fear and manipulation to maintain control. Their inability to adapt to the growing crisis created a closed feedback loop where the leaders blamed members for failures while enforcing more extreme measures. The environment, once vibrant with shared purpose, became a rigid, oppressive system devoid of hope. This escalating dissonance culminated in the tragic murder-suicides of the 1990s. What began as a group of shared belief and collaboration collapsed into a cycle of distrust, blame, and ultimately destruction. To disrupt distorted dissonance, members must focus on repairing the foundational relationships within the group. First, the group must address environmental pressures collectively rather than relying solely on the leader. When challenges arise, asking questions like, "How can we work together to solve this?" shifts the focus from blaming individuals to collaborative problem-solving. This reframing can stabilize the environment and prevent cascading failures. Building trust and solidarity among members is equally important. Strong interpersonal connections within the group can help counter the leader's attempts to centralize control or scapegoat dissenters. Small acts of collaboration, whether organizing mutual support networks or addressing issues collectively, reduce dependence on the leader and create a buffer against dissonance. Finally, members must develop their own sense of agency and purpose, ensuring the group's identity isn't entirely tied to the leader's success or failure. Cultivating independence through external friendships, professional development, or personal goals helps members see that their worth extends beyond the group. These small steps create resilience and flexibility, allowing individuals to navigate challenges without becoming trapped in the system's collapse. Harmony thrives when every relationship strengthens the others, fostering growth and adaptability. Dissonance, on the other hand, creates a chain reaction of failure that pulls the entire system down. By recognizing and addressing these dynamics, members can work to restore balance or, if necessary, rebuild their lives beyond the constraints of a toxic group. The allure of a cult lies in its promise of belonging, purpose, and meaning. But this promise is often underpinned by control, suppression, and fear, creating an environment that traps members in cycles of dependency and manipulation. By examining the dynamics of these systems through the lens of triads, leader, members, and environment, we uncover how these relationships transform from collaborative and adaptive to rigid and destructive. Breaking free from these systems requires more than recognizing their dysfunction. It demands a deliberate effort to rebuild connections, challenge false narratives, and reclaim personal agency. Members must disentangle themselves from the illusion of harmony and see control for what it is, a distortion of natural, healthy relationships. They must challenge feedback loops that suppress honesty, expose how the past is manipulated to justify control, and resist the bottlenecks that consolidate power in the leader's hands. This journey toward liberation begins with small but courageous steps: questioning dogma, forming trusted connections, and seeking outside perspectives. Gradual acts of independence can puncture the isolating walls of the cult and reveal pathways toward growth, creativity, and freedom. True resilience and adaptability arise when communities are built on trust, inclusivity, and mutual respect, not fear and conformity. Ultimately, understanding the dynamics of toxic groups isn't just about escaping their grasp, it's about preventing their rise and building healthier, more supportive communities. By fostering open dialogue, encouraging diverse perspectives, and emphasizing collective accountability, we can create environments where people thrive together rather than falter under control. These principles aren't just tools for liberation. They're the foundation for a life lived freely and authentically. Let this insight guide us to dismantle systems of control and rebuild with intention. With courage and clarity, we can transform the patterns of entrapment into opportunities for empowerment, fostering communities that uplift rather than oppress.